First Filipino soldiers' victory, Battle of Miudong. What does it take to become a legend? For a group of Filipino soldiers, the answer was found in their very first battle on foreign soil. They were volunteers fighting for a country they'd never seen, against an enemy they had yet to size up. But on a cold November day in 1950, they were ambushed and badly outnumbered. They had two choices, run or fight. They chose to fight. This is the often forgotten story of the Battle of Mudong, the firefight that forged the fighting Filipinos and became their first legendary victory in the Korean War. Chapter 1. The Call to Defend Democracy. In the summer of 1950, the world watched as North Korean forces poured across the 38th parallel to conquer South Korea. The United Nations put out a desperate call for help, asking free nations to defend a democracy on the verge of collapse. In the Philippines, a young republic still healing from World War II, President Elpidio Quirino knew his country had to act. He urged Congress to join the fight, arguing the Philippines had a duty to help a friend and push back against the spread of communism. And so, with the passing of a law called Republic Act 573, the Philippine Expeditionary Forces to Korea, or PEFTOK, was born. Eventually, more than 7,400 Filipino soldiers would volunteer from all over the archipelago. They were driven by duty, a belief in freedom, and a whole lot of national pride. The Philippines was the very first Asian country to answer the UN's call and send a combat unit to a war thousands of miles from home. Among these volunteers was the 10th Battalion Combat Team, the 10th BCT. These guys weren't rookies. They were a tough, experienced unit, already hardened by fighting guerrillas back home. Known as the Fighting 10th, their motto was simple: steady on. In September 1950, with 64 officers and over 1,300 enlisted men, the 10th BCT boarded a U.S. Navy ship, leaving everything they knew behind. They were headed for Korea, a place that would test them in ways they couldn't imagine and write their names into history. Chapter 2. Crossing the Threshold. On September 19, 1950, the 10th BCT landed in the port of Pusan. What they saw was a painful reminder of what their own country had just gone through: ruined cities, crowds of desperate refugees, and the haunted faces of people trapped in a brutal war. One soldier, Maximo Young, later said he was shocked by how many thin, scared children were begging for food. It hit the Filipino troops hard, and they often shared their own rations. The battalion, under the command of Colonel Mariano Azurin, was supposed to be a tank unit, but thanks to some logistical hiccups, their M4 Sherman tanks never showed up. Instead, they were given lighter M24 Chaffee tanks and reorganized into a mechanized infantry unit. They had to adapt, and fast. Their first mission wasn't some glorious charge into battle. It was the grinding work of securing supply lines and hunting down thousands of North Korean guerrillas. The Filipinos put their counterinsurgency experience to good use across an 800-square-mile area. But it didn't take long for them to suffer their first loss. Private Alipio Siciliana was killed in a guerrilla ambush, becoming the first Filipino soldier to die in the Korean War. The war was suddenly very real. As the brutal Korean winter started closing in, they got new orders: head north, deeper into enemy territory, toward a small town that was about to become their trial by fire, Miudong. Chapter 3. The Ordeal, the Battle of Mudong. On November 11, 1950, the 10th PCT got its orders. Parts of the battalion were to secure the main supply route near the villages of Mudong and Singkwe. Intelligence said 2 battalions of the North Korean People's Army, about 1,200 soldiers, were dug in and waiting. Leading the Filipino recon element was First Sergeant Maximo Young, a World War II vet who'd trained at the U.S. Army's Armored Force School. His column had a few M24 Chaffee light tanks and trucks full of infantrymen. As the column snaked through the hilly terrain at dawn, the tension was suffocating. Around 9:30 a.m., while rounding a sharp bend in the road, a huge explosion ripped through the convoy. the lead truck hit a landmine. In a split second, the quiet morning turned into a hailstorm of machine gun and rifle fire. The Filipinos had walked straight into a perfectly laid trap. Men were hit, and the crews of the first two tanks were stunned and frozen by the initial shock. From the third tank in line, First Sergeant Young peered through his periscope, quickly taking in the chaos. The enemy was well entrenched, pouring fire down on his exposed men. With the lead tanks out of action and his men pinned down, Young knew that waiting meant dying. So he did something incredible. He unlatched his turret, climbed on top of his own tank, and grabbed the .50 caliber machine gun. Completely exposed to enemy fire, Young started hammering the North Korean positions. His relentless, roaring machine gun fire broke the enemy's rhythm and gave his men the cover they desperately needed. Seeing his insane bravery, the other tank crews and infantrymen snapped into action. They opened up with everything they had: machine guns, rifles, and mortars. The ambushers were about to find out they'd picked a fight with the wrong battalion. The tables had turned. The surprise attack was over. Now it was a real fight, and the Filipinos were winning.
Chapter 4: The Reward and the Road Back. When the shooting finally stopped, the North Koreans were in full retreat. The ambush was completely broken, and the Filipino soldiers held the field. The Battle of Miudong, their first major fight in the war, was a stunning victory. The cost wasn't zero. One Filipino soldier was killed and several were wounded. But the enemy had paid a much higher price. Accounts credit First Sergeant Maximo Young alone with killing 42 enemy soldiers. All told, the North Koreans lost at least 50 men in the failed ambush. News of the victory shot through the UN command. These newcomers from a tropical country hadn't just survived their first test, they had crushed it. They faced a larger, dug-in enemy, got caught in a deadly trap, and still walked away with a win. This is where their legend began to take shape. The discipline and raw courage they showed earned them the respect of their allies and a nickname that would stick with them for the rest of the war: the Fighting Filipinos. For his incredible heroism, First Sergeant Young would later receive the Philippine Gold Cross Medal and South Korea's highest military award, the Take-It Cordon of the Order of Military Merit. Chapter 5: The Resurrection and Legacy. The victory at Mudong was more than just one good day. It was the moment that turned the 10th BCT from a battalion of experienced soldiers into a unit of legends. The confidence they earned on that freezing November day would be put to the ultimate test just 5 months later. In April 1951, at the Battle of Mudong, the 10th BCT, by then reduced to about 900 men, found themselves facing down 40,000 Chinese and North Korean troops in a massive offensive. Everything they learned at Mudong, that one person's bravery can inspire an army, that discipline under fire is everything, and that you can fight back against impossible odds, is what saved them at Mudong. Mudong was the dress rehearsal for their defensive masterpiece. It was where the battalion that would become famous as the 900 of Mudong first proved to the world and to themselves that they would never break. The Battle of Mudong might not be as famous as the epic defense at Mudong, but it was the critical first chapter in the story of the Fighting Filipinos. It was the day a battalion of volunteers proved their worth on the world stage and set a standard for bravery that still echoes today. They were the first to fight, the first to win, and the first to show the world the unbreakable spirit of the Filipino soldier. Their legacy proves that heroes aren't just born, they're forged in the fire of their first great battle. What is your opinion about this forgotten first victory? Let us know in the comments below. If you want to see more stories of incredible military ordeals, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching till the end and for subscribing, liking, and commenting.